Hi, I'm Pastor Chris here with Glenna Haller, one of our Westminster members, and she has an exciting opportunity coming up very soon to represent not just Westminster, but to also represent the PCUSA and a much broader spectrum of folks as she will be serving as a representative to the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women at the United Nations. This is an exciting opportunity, and we're excited for you.
Thank you.
So I will ask you some different questions as we go. And first, could you tell us a bit about your journey with Presbyterian Women and how you became involved in representing PW at the United Nations?
Okay. Well, of course, I became a Presbyterian woman the moment that I joined the Presbyterian Church. And I've always been impressed and excited about the role that Presbyterian women play, especially their role in the UN. So when I went to Louisville in 2016, I kind of got an inkling that I might be interested in doing this. The church-wide gathering in 2021 was held virtually. But then when I went to St. Louis in 2024, I really felt the calling and decided this is something that I wanted to do. I made out an application, sent it to the national board, and I was accepted.
That's awesome. What does it mean to you personally to represent PW at the 69th session of the Commission on the Status of Women?
I think I'm equally excited, curious, and a little bit terrified. I'm excited for the challenge and the opportunity. I'm curious about how the UN works and how we might be able to make a difference. And then I'm terrified that I will go do this and then I won't make a difference for women and children. So,
speaking of the positive possibilities, why do you believe it's important for PW to have a presence at the CSW?
Well, PW has always championed the cause for peace and justice. And in fact, this is interesting, our mission as we see it today was probably born from the Presbyterian Women. In 1872, the General Assembly asked the Presbyterian Women if they could come up with a systematic way to earn money for missionaries. And so that's how some of our pledges have come about today. So PW plays an important voice in the UN and makes sure that women are represented.
Speaking on maybe the more personal side, can you share a moment or experience in your life that has particularly shaped your perspective on gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls?
Sure. I don't have any particular moment or experience, but I've always been impressed with the wise and powerful women of the Presbyterian Church that not only made changes in the local church, but in the national level. You know, I've watched testimony from women that have worked mission globally. One of my favorite people, one of my heroes was Marge Carpenter. She saw mission worldwide, and in 1995, she was moderator of General Assembly. She was a hero of mine, and she passed away in 2020, but I will always remember her. You know, I've seen Presbyterian women roll up their sleeves and build houses for Habitat. I've watched Presbyterian women march on Washington for injustice against people, and they've marched for people that they don't know, will never know, but they just felt a sisterhood to these people.
How has accreditation of Presbyterian women to the CSW in 2018 strengthened the relationship between PW and the PCUSA?
Well, I think probably I can answer that by talking about what our purpose is as PW women, and that is to nurture faith, and we do that through prayer and Bible study. We support the church's mission. We work for justice and peace, and I talked a little bit about that. And then we try to build an inclusive community. And so in that way, we kind of connect with the CSW.
How does the work of the UN Commission on the Status of Women align with the goals of Presbyterian women?
I think Presbyterian women have always tried to inspire women to their full potential. And in doing so, we gain knowledge. When we gain knowledge, we gain the ability to act. And when Presbyterian women act, we make things happen. And it might move slowly, inch by inch, but we do make things happen.
Absolutely. Could you also speak to the specific ways in which PW is advocating for gender equality at the UN and how that translates into action at the grassroots level?
Sure. So we've always participated in local and national efforts to eradicate violence against women. We educate and we support through our goods and our money. We advocate for women economically. So, for instance, Presbyterian Women, their mission fund last year was over $1,900,000.
Wow.
So the thank offering was over $900,000. The birthday offering was over $600,000. Our honorary memberships were over $240,000. And so that's just money. That doesn't count the boots on the ground working. The money that we do get go to hospitals and daycares. They build playgrounds. They go to some of the poorest churches in our communities, and they educate and support young women. So there's a lot of good work going on there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. This year's CSW will focus on reviewing progress made since the 1995 Beijing Declaration on Gender Equality. What do you see as the most significant achievements in this area over the past 30 years?
Well, we've seen gains in policies and programs that integrate gender perspectives into eradicating poverty. We've seen better access to health care, to education, to social services. We've seen microcredit and microfinancing to help these women become independent economically. There was the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. That's a mouthful, but it was considered the International Bill of Rights. That was ratified in September of 1981 by 189 member states. And when I say member states, I mean members of the UN.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
As you move toward that work, what are some of the most pressing gaps or challenges that remain in the implementation of the Beijing Platform for Action, especially in the context of the global church community?
Right. Well, I think anytime that we see inequality or injustice, it affects the church community. But what we're still seeing is lower employment ratios. We're still seeing more women in shadow jobs. And those shadow jobs would be child care, it would be caring for the elderly, caring for the disabled. And although these are very necessary and honorable jobs, they don't necessarily bring enough to keep an income for a family going. We still see less protection legally for women. We see less women qualifying for Social Security benefits, and we see less women getting pension rights.
How does the CSW engage with emerging issues that affect gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls? And are there any topics this year that particularly resonate with you?
You know, I thought about this a lot, and I've decided I'm going to reserve that answer until after the meeting, because sometimes I tend to go one direction and then I find out I should have went another direction. So I'm just going to kind of wait on that and see what happens.
Yeah, that sounds wise. Can you share an example of how you have seen the CSW's discussions and recommendations impact real change, either globally or in local communities?
Sure. So there's been a lot of conclusions agreed upon, and the interesting thing to me, or the wonderful thing to me, is these are agreed upon by Arabic, Chinese, English, Russian, French, Spanish people around the globe. The issues include climate, elimination of violence towards women, access to public services. They played a crucial role in drafting early international conventions recognizing women's rights, and not only promoting the women's rights, but documenting the reality of the daily lives of these women, which led to global standards on gender equality and empowerment. We've also seen a rise in many countries of women holding elected government jobs now that we wouldn't have seen before. They pushed legislation and policies to prevent domestic violence and sexual assault, and they contributed to improving the economic opportunities of women in general. So there's a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. What role do you think prayer and spiritual support play in advocating for justice and gender equality at the international level?
Well, I think that prayer plays a significant role in all of our lives, but I think it leaves us a space to reflect on the inherent worth of all individuals, regardless of gender. And it gives cause to petition for a more just and equitable world. I think that when Christians pray and when we stand for our beliefs, we put not only our government on notice, but international factions on notice. And we say we're watching, but not only that, but God is watching. So we can just pray for guidance and for someone to guide us through this.
And one final question. What are your hopes and aspirations for your time at the CSW? And what key outcomes would you like to see for the future of gender equality?
Right. So I guess my big question is, what can I do? Is my job to share the knowledge? Is my job to write letters? Is it to volunteer more here in Lincoln? You know, I feel like I can share the knowledge that I gain with my friends here at Westminster, with our Homestead Presbytery PW, maybe
Absolutely.
with the Synod. And Maya Angelou said one time that when we know better, we do better. And so maybe we can put that into practice. There are over 800 events at the CSW this year. So there's inside events that happens inside the UN, parallel events happen alongside of it. So it's been a big process deciding where I'm gonna go and what I'm gonna do. But I was gonna share with you just really quickly, I wrote some of these down. The empowerment of women in mental health, improving outcomes for trafficked migrant women and girls. How can we lower environmental health impacts on women and girls? Peacemaking processes for a holistic perspective. And then there's many events around the Beijing Declaration. Has it worked? Is it still working? What's left to be done? So that's kind of what's happening with the CSW.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. There's so much that you're already considering as you enter into that trip, and to have such an important voice for women that speaks to the needs for equity, not just from Lincoln or even in our own neighborhoods, but across the world, and that's a wonderful responsibility. Are there any other thoughts you'd like to share with us?
Well, I just, the only thing that I'd want to say is I hope that my Westminster family will be praying for me while I'm there.
Absolutely.
And I will be in prayer the whole time that I'm there. So maybe together we can make a difference.
Absolutely. So Westminster and friends, your call over that time frame is to pray for Glenna and pray for the outcomes of what comes. And we look at Scripture and see an overwhelming witness to human flourishing, and that is a great call and responsibility, and we are excited and proud of you in this opportunity, Glenna. It's really a wonderful opportunity for you and for the PCUSA and our church in this moment.
Good. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.